Okay, super duper. Now we should be live. Let me just check in the group. And if you are logged on and can see us, let us know. It'd be good to know who's there. There was a little bit of a gap last time between what we were saying and what was showing on Facebook. So, cool. I can see it is live on the group. And it's probably just a couple of seconds while it catches up. So I'm going to close my desktop. Super, so just let us know if you're here, and if you have any questions, as per usual, drop them in the comments below. So without further ado, let us get into our juicy topic for this afternoon / early evening. Thank you for allowing us to do it a little bit earlier than normal. I suppose our routines are shifting on a daily basis and we're just getting used to kind of what's happening around us. So very grateful for that. We've been asking questions in our stories on Instagram and, sense checking in with friends about what would be a good topic for us to cover today. And something that was definitely coming through quite often was this sense of overwhelm and the unknown and lots of things changing and things being out of our control. And I think summing it up in that sort of topic of overwhelm, the perfect person for us to speak to about this topic was Tess. So let's jump in, let's chat a little bit about this topic. But first, Tess, can you introduce yourself to the gang? I know you've been quite active in the gang. We've been very appreciative of that. So tell us a little bit about who you are and why this is a favourite topic of yours.
Hi, and thanks, Danny, for having me. So I practice talking therapy, CBT, and NLP. I help people to help themselves. So this topic was very interesting because we're in very uncertain times, and a lot of people are feeling anxious and panicky about the current situation. And it's a really good topic for us to delve in and see how we can manage these situations so we can actually be in the present moment and feel happier and move forward, as opposed to dwelling in the doom and gloom that perhaps some of us might be feeling.
Yeah, definitely. I've had a few questions really around different topics. So maybe we could start like, what is overwhelm? What is it that we're feeling both, mentally, emotionally, physical when we have that sort of sense of overwhelm? What's kind of happening at that point?
So when we say overwhelm, it's a strong feeling, it's a great amount of. So it can be an overwhelming feeling of happiness when you feel joy, when, perhaps when you've had a baby, you feel that joy, that overwhelming sense of love. It can also be used for when we feel stressed and we feel like we're spiraling downwards. So overwhelming doom and gloom. So actually the term overwhelm means to have a strong amount of, or a great amount of anything. So it's a ...
And that's quite funny, isn't it? Because I suppose this is so true with like lots of the different mental health topics, that we just ultimately associate them to be something that's negative. And using those two examples, you definitely feeling overwhelmed with joy. It does. There is some kind of similarities, isn't there? There's sort of like that high highs and low lows. There's definitely something in that makes sense. But I think we just prioritize it being a negative thing most of the time, or the word has negative connotations, right?
And that's the interesting thing about the language that we use, especially in this time. If we use negative words, we will feel negative about the situation. It's all about using positive words to move ourselves forward, or feel great about this current situation. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen today, tomorrow, but what we have is the present time. It's about making us feel happier, feel grateful for the moment that we're in, and all the things associated with it. So, for example, practicing gratitude is a great example of how we can overcome that feeling of overwhelming anxiety or doom and gloom. So tell me, Danny, what have you said thank you for today?
I just, I'm really grateful to just get through each 20 minutes. So what I've done is I've literally broken my day down into like micro blocks. I've got two little ones who are 3 and 4 who don't really get what's kind of happening right now, and they don't get why, you know, they don't get why I'm here and why my husband's here, you know, because we're usually at work. They can't really process those things, and then throwing in, you know, we're doing yoga, YouTube, we're doing maths classes, and he doesn't know why he's not going to school, and there's lots of questions and unknowns. So breaking it down into those little blocks has been sort of quite helpful for me. So I'm grateful every 20 minutes that that passes, because I know it's, you know, we're one step closer to actually having, you know, not great days, but just days where nobody's died. We've all got through it together. We've had some, you know, mini fights, and we've got on with things. But every 20 minutes, there's a bit of a sigh of relief, and with that
wonderful.
is definitely, it's been very helpful.
So the to-do list is a wonderful technique, but I'm going to add to that. Have you heard of a to-be list?
No, I've not, and I am a massive to-do list fan. So any kind of list, you've got my attention.
So to-be lists are about tasks and goals, and we've all got that. For example, get the kids ready for homeschooling by 7 o'clock in the morning. Get them sat at the table after breakfast by 7:45. I'm ready to go. So my son and my daughter have a timetable, and they have a to-do list. But we don't actually think about a to-be list, which means how are we going to be today? What are we going to choose to be? Are we going to choose to be miserable and think, c'est la vie, what is life about? Or are we going to choose, right, how are we going to feel today? Are we going to feel positive? What have we got to feel positive about? And this ties in nicely with gratitude, to be grateful, to be happy, to be content. Okay, what are your thoughts about that?
I think that's really important. I suppose it feels it's sort of in that sort of territory of like setting intentions for the day, but it feels a lot less. I don't know. I think setting intentions sometimes feels overwhelming. It feels like it's quite a big thing, but actually setting a sort of to be feels a little bit more like you would almost have it written at the top of your to-do list. You know, this is what I'm going to be today, and these are the things that I need to do. But that would be a really nice way to sort of put yourself in the right gear that you need to be in.
So examples of to be is to be kind. So I know you've got the kids at home, and a lot of mums and dads have kids at home. It is to actually exercise kindness, because of course the little people really don't understand or fathom in the way that us adults do about what the situation is. So they may be a little bit annoying, mine included, but it's to speak to them with kindness and show kindness. And also empathy. I think that's a really important message. As a result of whatever's happening in the world, it's to show empathy to everybody, because nobody knows what everybody is going through. But if we can exercise a little bit of empathy, stepping into someone else's shoes just for a moment to see what they're feeling and thinking, it will really help us to reconnect with humanity. We will connect on a small scale with our own family, and our family members. Most of us may have family members back home. So when we're on the Skype or the FaceTime or the BOTIM, it's to actually show empathy and feel empathy, and help them to see a way forward also, with positivity and kindness.
Yeah, I think there's, that empathy at the moment is very important, isn't it? I think, Tessa, the sun shining through like an angel over your shoulder. I keep losing you.
Say halo.
There you go. You're a real life angel there. That's it. Perfect. I think empathy is a real one now. So I was totally guilty of this at the beginning. Like even when my husband was very all about the situation, wanted us to be doing things, and I was very guilty of almost shaming him for that, I suppose, and like not really sort of seeing from his perspective. And now connecting with my parents on Skype every day. It's when I'm trying to sort of check in with them and really being able to sort of put myself in their shoes, you know, what they're going through. And I suppose it is good that I'm checking in with them, but I think taking that extra little time of what is it that I could be really be more mindful of, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's very stressful for my mum, especially at the moment. And she just got shingles today, which is probably not a great thing to have, or she combined to the house too. So yeah, they're really struggling. But having that real empathy for what they're going through is something that I probably need to work on a bit more.
Okay, so you were speaking about your mum with the shingles diagnosis. We can actually reframe that. We can say, oh, that's unfortunate, or we can say, well, she's got shingles now and she's at home and she's in the best possible place where she can recover. Just reframe the negative into a positive slant.
Yeah.
So sometimes it really does help. It helps with switching some of the stress hormones off and coming back to ambient levels to help us feel that we are in control.
Can you just switch them off? Like that sounds like it's quite a simple thing to.
Well, the more you practice mindfulness and reframing, so we've got a thing in the back of the brain called the amygdala, which is responsible for our fight or flight. Studies have shown when we practice mindfulness on a regular basis, what happens to the amygdala? It actually decreases in size, right?
So is that
Studies have shown that daily. Say again.
That's the kind of, not the off switch, but that's the epicenter of where this
So
stress or.
So the amygdala is responsible for our fight or flight or stay response. And often when we're in a stressful situation, our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our rational thought, is actually hijacked by this to the front end. It's like, no, it's time for us to down tools and we're going to go into a state of panic. And that's how our body reacts. Now, when we practice gratitude, just taking a few seconds of breathing and saying, okay, I am being mindful, I am being grateful for what I have. What happens is that amygdala doesn't hijack as much. You are able to pull it back. So is it a simple thing? When you practice it, it becomes easier. Not simple, but it becomes easier. But again, it's about being present in the moment and knowing that there are going to be brighter days as opposed to the doom and gloom. Again, it's about the to-be list. How are you going to be today? I'm going to be positive. So in the face of adversity, if you get a negative diagnosis or if you get some bad news, it's actually stepping back and going, okay, this is bad, being rational about it. This is not what I expected. However, what can I take from this? What can I do with this? What are my learnings? So when I practice with my clients, it's all about what your take-home points are, what your learnings are, so you can actually manage the situation. When you feel panicked, what happens is it's like it's all coming towards you and you don't know what to do. It's a bit like The Matrix. I don't know if you remember watching that. All of a sudden, all the bullets are going towards you, like Neo, and then all of a sudden he's enlightened. He's like, ooh, right, and everything goes in slow motion. What you're doing is actually slowing everything. A second, stop. It's a stop pause technique. Go, okay, I hear it, I see it, I feel it. What am I going to do about it? What action am I going to take? Yeah.
We don't really take those pauses very much, do we? I think.
No, we don't.
It's so funny when you speak to people. It seems like it's almost. I think it used to be like, I'm fine. So how are you? I'm fine. And now it's like, I'm busy. I'm so busy. Oh God, I've got so much to do. This happened and busy things and this person and that. There's always there's busyness. That I suppose that is. Well, that feels like. I think hijack. That was like a good word that you. That's definitely something that can resonate with that word.
Often people don't stop because if they stop, then they'll have to talk. They'll have to think other than work, children, husband, wife, things that are going on in their life. Sometimes when we stop, it's really great for us to actually have some introspection and take stock of the day. But we often don't do that, because if we did, then we'd have to perhaps take some action and make some changes. And some people are scared to make such changes, so they rather just kind of go on the train and just go into the next station until they get to their final destination, without actually reflecting on the journey that they've taken. So often, especially in this kind of period, it's really great to reflect and think, okay, this time last week, maybe I was at the mall, not practicing social distancing. Okay, last week, what am I doing? I'm spending time with the family. I'm doing this, that, and the other. I'm working in my home office. I am more productive. I am spending quality time, not quantity time, doing what I usually do. So it's all about reframing, saying, okay, it is what it is. So what can I do to make it feel better and make it work for me in a positive way?
Is reframing, is that like a big CBT thing? So I had CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Am I correct?
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
had CBT when I was a lot younger. I was around 20. I had chronic back pain, and at that point, I think I was struggling very emotionally as well. But I was looking for a solution that was going to help me sort of manage the pain side of it as well, and that's where I found CBT. And I don't know, do I remember reframing these being sort of quite a core concept within that therapeutic?
Yeah, absolutely. Reframing is used in CBT and NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. It's about taking what you have, the images and thoughts and feelings that you have in your mind, and changing it, because what we see in our minds is often what is materialized in our body. If we feel stress, our body manifest stress. Give you a quick example. A lot of people come and see me because they feel stressed or feel anxiety. So they feel the palpitations, the sweaty palms, and and the shortness of breath, the funny feeling in the tummy, and so on and so forth. But excuse me, these are the physical manifestations of anxiety. But actually, what anxiety probably is the ability or the inability to have control or to have power over a situation. So when we look at anxiety from that aspect, when you actually allow yourself to regain some power and some control over the situation, all of a sudden, all these physical manifestations start dropping away. And the more you practice power and control through various strategies and techniques, what happens is all of a sudden, like, I can do this, I've got this. And it's a journey. I mean, you have to practice, with everything. If you don't practice, then it's just talk, right? And with practicing, what happens is there's this thing called neuroplasticity, where your brain retrains and new habits are formed. And the more you perform these habits more, it becomes second nature to you. And then all of a sudden, whatever situation you are in, you're able to look at it from a pragmatic point of view and saying, okay, so this will probably make me feel stressed, but what am I going to do to preempt it? So sometimes, we have this thing where we do a post-mortem. A post-mortem is much like after the event, we kind of look at things and say, okay, we could have done this better, and so on and so forth. The hot wash in business terms. So what I like to do is something called the pre-mortem. Okay, so whatever situation is happening, it's actually have a word with yourself. We use that all the time back home. Have a word with yourself and say, okay, all right. So got a new puppy. Okay, what could go wrong with a new puppy aside from all the joy and love that he or she may give you? Might think, okay, the dog's going to chew on my shoes. So your pre-mortem would be, okay, I'm going to move all the shoes for now to outside, or I'm going to move the shoes into the shoe cabinet. So that's pre-mortem. Okay, the dog is probably going to chew on the wires. What am I going to do? I'm going to move the wires up or remove them from a place where the dog may chew, because obviously the dog isn't trained, the puppy isn't trained. So there's lots of things that we can do pre-mortem, not necessarily associated with a puppy. You can use it in any aspect of your life where you can preempt it. And in NLP, it's called your future past. So literally, you see it in your future because you've already seen it. It's already happened, so it's in your past. So you're already walking that journey. So when it happens to you, you're like, oh, okay, done that. Slightly like deja vu, I guess, right? You're like, oh, yeah, I know how to deal with that because you've already seen it in your mind's eye, you've heard it in your mind's ear, and you're able to practice the actions that you've already thought about.
That makes so much sense. I suppose, and I think for me, I'm always late for everything, which my fellow co-founders will be here to support me on. So, it's very much about how to, then I turn up and I'm like, oh, this, that, and the other, I've forgotten this, or, doing that. So I think it's something that I've been trying to do recently is to be better at that. So be more prepared, right? So if it's like making sure I know what I'm going to wear the night before, so the clothes are there, or having like washing my hair at night instead of having like a full hair blow drying session in the morning. Not that I ever do because I always look like this, but at least preparing some of those things in advance, and it does it reduces that stress, overwhelm, anxiety when you're
Absolutely
kind of
prepared.
so shaves a few minutes off practically.
There's this expression that was coined a few years ago. 1 is nothing, 2 is okay, 3 is fantastic. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. 1. So say for example, you're going to a meeting and you only have 1 pen, right? And that pen goes. What do? You haven't got another pen. All right. So if you have 2 pens, it's fine, right? But if both pens don't work, at least you've got a third one.
Okay.
So if you kind of use that in your life, right, it can actually help you also. So 1 is nothing, 2 is okay, but 3 is fantastic.
Okay.
So all good things come in threes, right?
Everyone will be walking around now with loads of pens in their pockets.
Somebody will probably steal it anyway.
No, I think that's really useful, and I know that's so. One thing that I get very overwhelmed with is my to-do list,
Yes.
and I think I use it as a method of like getting stuff out of my brain, getting stuff off my chest.
Yes.
I used to use just pen and paper, and I would just kind of throw things down. I had little tick boxes next to them. But it's funny because all the girls I used to live with at university used to say, "Danny, you're the most organized, unorganized person that we've ever met." It's like, you've got the list, you've got it. What happened? Where did it fall apart? So I think I use that sort of to-do list as a coping mechanism of getting things, that are sort of stressing out. I need to remember to speak to this guy and email that person and do all these things. But then at the same time, I see this list and it's like 2 A4 pages, and I'm like, oh yes, like I can't. How am I going to get around to that? And then I get overwhelmed with the list. So how can I be better at that?
Okay, so it's great that you get out of your head. That's number 1 thing when you feel overwhelmed, is to get out of your head, by which I mean writing things down. So if to-do lists help you, then that's something that you can continue with. Now, what the second part of that is, you've got lots of things to do. Where do we begin? Right? Sometimes it's firefighting. So I use a technique called the Eisenhower box. So,
there she is. And I posted this on the group as well, if anyone is looking for this.
Yeah, so Danny's got a resource for you, so you can kind of print it off later on. So what it was, President Eisenhower from the States, when he came into power, he felt that he was firefighting all the time. So he created a simple box. It contains 4 cells. You've got the to-do box, the decide box, the delegate box, and the delete box. So what I mean by each one is, when you have a to-do list, you can look at it and say, okay, what is it that I need to do right now? What is important and urgent right now? And that will go in your top left box. So it might be, okay, an email's come in from, I don't know, your dad, and he wants you to do something that is very, very important, and it's a secret surprise party thing for your mom. You might decide, okay, this is really urgent, this is really important, I must do it now. So it goes in your to-do list, right? So we're putting it into this little matrix. And then there's these things, okay, it's not very important, but it is a bit urgent. So that's when you may delegate. For example, if we're at home, emptying the dishwasher.
Oh, delegate that, definitely.
Right. Okay, it is not that important, but it may be urgent because the kids, you need to get your cutlery and your plates out. So you think, oh, you know what, I'm a bit busy. I'm going to task that to my wonderful husband. Okay, so you may delegate that. Okay, another thing is something that's not urgent, but it's important. I've got some reading to do, right? It's not urgent, but it's important because when I read this, then I can write that email a bit later, put that into decide when you're going to do it box, right? And then another, the last box is the delete box. Things that you actually don't need to do. They're not very important. They're not urgent, and they can be sideswiped or discarded. For example, I need to check my Instagram to see if Kayla is doing the latest booty exercise, right? There's lots of exercises on there. Important for me to take time out of my day to go and find out if she's done that. Probably not. So it goes into my delete box. And if I have extra time, I may want to take it out of my delete box and go, okay, let's see what Kayla's doing, for example. So in your to-do list, there are so many ways you can take what you actually then decide how you're going to approach it so it doesn't become overwhelming.
Well, that's pretty cool, isn't it? I think there's and I do like categorizing things in how important they are. So I usually have things like at the top of the list, but the urgency, that's probably, you know, what does cause the kerfuffle in my brain. And it's like, is this something that needs to be done now? I remember reading about, there was another technique that called Eat the Frog.
Okay.
Have you heard of Eat the Frog?
No.
So this is something when I was studying, and it was a technique one of my lecturers taught me about, and it was like, do the thing first that is the kind of biggest, scariest, probably the thing that you don't want to do or the thing that you've been putting off.
Yeah.
Do that first, and once that's kind of done, then it will allow you to be a lot more relaxed and get through the other things. So I suppose the frog is something that is urgent as it is important, right? Because it's like you've either put it off too long, or you know, it's a big you know, something you've got to deliver to someone that's a little bit meatier than other things. So that would make sense. It kind of sort of complements, you would do that. That would be the urgent, important thing you would get off your list.
It's interesting, the word that you use, that you need to do it. Now, sometimes when we are procrastinating or we have a to-do list, we're using words that are not moving us onto action. Right. Now, let me give you an example. If I said to you, Danny, you need to do this. You need to do it right now. Would that make you, oh, your face says it all. Would that make you want to do it?
Not really.
What is she saying? Why is she talking to me like that? No, I don't like the way she's talking to me. Now, that's great, and I wouldn't do that. However, when we're talking to ourselves, we often say, you know what, Tess, we need to do this. That's my internal dialogue. Or you may say to yourself, come on, Daddy, you need to do this. Come on, you need to do it. And what happens is we back ourselves into a corner and we actually want to do it. Now, if we were to change the words to, do you know what, I want to do it, then it creates a different narrative. I want to do it because actually I can see a pathway. Because, for example, I'll give you an example. I've got lots of ironing upstairs, and I've been looking at it for the past 3 days, and I myself have been guilty of saying I need to do it. But I know if I say to myself I've got to do it, I will get up and do it. That's my purposeful word that will trigger me onto action. Everybody has a trigger word which moves them onto action. So when you have a to-do list, when you're procrastinating or you have been procrastinating, just be mindful of the language you're using to which may hinder or halt your process of actually doing that action.
Yeah.
So if it is, I would like to do it, it's not a definitive. I want to do it. Perhaps maybe move you onto action more than you need to do it, because is it a necessity? The necessities, if we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, are food, water, shelter, and so on and so forth. So do we need to do that? For example, in this current period, we need perhaps. Oh, okay, let's go to the UK. There might be a need to get toilet roll, a need, okay, because there's been a hype that, you know, there aren't many toilet rolls available, so you feel the urge. In the UAE, in Dubai, do we need to go and get loo roll? Not really, because we've got the pipe, and you know, we currently everything's fine. We can go to shops without panicking. See the difference in the need and the want.
Yeah, that's a good reason. I think wants a very, if you want to do so, that's probably a good trigger word for me, because it makes me feel very uplifted about something, I suppose, and that I can definitely. I suppose my to-do list is a lot of worky type stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and especially obviously doing this wonderful work, like wanting to do stuff because I know the impact it will have. That would be really good. You know, internal dialogue versus
Absolutely.
have to need to get it out. I think that would be a very good reframe for me.
So going back to being mindful, I think a technique that I quite like to use is drinking water. So do you have anything there? Do you have a glass of water or anything there?
I don't know. I'm hidden in my spare bedroom, so you can't hear my children screaming.
All right, no worries. So I've got this bottle, right? Okay. Now, when I practice mindfulness with my clients, I often ask them to drink water and describe to me what they're doing. So typically, they would drink water and go, yeah, I've got water in my mouth and I swallow it. I'm like, that's great. So talk to me about the strategy and the process of drinking water. Now, why I ask this is for you to be mindful in this, to be present and to be mindful of what you're doing. So it would be, I'm picking up this bottle. I can feel it's heavy. Mm-hmm. I am tipping the water bottle and putting it towards my lips. I can feel the plastic upon my lips, and then I am tilting the bottle until the water hits my tongue. Once it hits I can feel it slightly warm on my tongue, and it's swishing around, touching my cheeks, and it goes through the back of my throat. Now, at the back of my throat, I'm going to swallow. As I'm swallowing, I can kind of taste a little bit of the water and maybe a little bit of the plastic that was the water was contained in. And as I swallow, I can feel a cool sensation going down my throat. Okay? Now, maybe that's a bit poetic, if you like, but what we're doing here is being mindful, being present in the moment. So when we are feeling overwhelmed, just take a moment. You can do this with a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. So tea is the thing that I drink at home, coffee when I'm outside. So when you are feeling, ladies and gents, that, oh my gosh, this is a bit too much, take your tea, take your coffee, take your water, and be in the moment. Enjoy it, savor it, feel it. Because when we don't do that, that's when things will go on top of us, and we don't tend to be present in the moment. But when we take a step back, what happens is we gain a little bit more perspective. Mm-hmm. As we're drinking that tea, we have that feeling, right? And some people do that with cigarettes, you know, and so on and so forth. But it's having that me time, but actually taking a step back and having a different perspective on the situation, as opposed to being in the situation. You know, the expression "seeing the wood from the trees." So that usually helps as well.
Yeah, that's a good one, is it? Because I think it's I think when we think about, I sometimes get a bit overwhelmed with meditation and mindfulness. They feel like really big, you know, you think of a sort of guru sat on a rock, you know, meditating and in that sort of very mindful, very present kind of scenario. But that's a really good one for, because I suppose whether you're at work or whether you're at home or wherever you are, just to kind of get in, and like you said before about practicing this thing. I suppose the first time maybe you will drink it quite quickly, or you know, or maybe not too hot, but over time you probably notice even different things. I remember I did this with a date. So I wasn't like a huge fan. I didn't hate dates. You know, they were just dates. I suppose they were it was just something that was sweet. And obviously, being in a region, every time you go to Batil, you've got a lovely day at the side of your coffee. And somebody was kind of sort of saying this sort of technique around mindfulness. And I remember that it completely changed the way that I view dates. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how does it taste? Is it sweet? And then is it the temperature? Is it cool? Is it hard in the middle? Like softness of the outside? And that was just like that one date actually blew my mind. Whereas before you sort of kind of mindlessly, I suppose, drink the tea or do whatever it is that you kind of go about. And it really changed the experience. So I can definitely see how that would shift your gears when you're kind of running at 110 miles an hour. That would be a good thing to do.
So children do this very easily, right? If we reflect on our kids or even us as children, when we used to go out into the garden and we'd see a blade of grass, we'd feel the air on our back, we would see the little ants on the floor. Now, often, certainly when I go into the garden, I don't see any of those things. It's like, oh, dirty, get in, all that kind of stuff, especially if the dog's been out. But children do this perfectly and so innocently. So it's maybe during this period, just kind of reverting back to self and just remembering all those things that brought you joy. These things, perhaps when I'm from the UK, I'm from London. So for me, it's just reminiscing about being at my mum and dad's house and sitting in the garden and, having tea, my pretend tea with my little cups and saucers and my little teddy bears, just remembering and reminiscing and being mindful and, taking that and saying to yourself, well, that was a nice time. So what can I do now that I feel great about my memories? How can I bring that to the future, to the present now? How can I feel great and happy in myself so I can move forward as opposed to feeling overwhelmed or stressed?
Yeah, I think that is I suppose that is a bit of something you need to practice as well. But I think having the sort of opening your mind to new experiences, like beginner's mind, or like opening yourself through curiosity more than anything else. Nothing more than that. Just to see if you can see it differently or experience it differently, and sort of take the time or look, like you said, a bit of a combination of all the things you've mentioned about that sort of pre-mortem about what could be some things that are going to trip me up. Is there something that I can implement now that would, cause me to be a bit more mindful, that may then, have a knock-on effect and help me to kind of get through the next 20 minutes?
Absolutely. And I think the word that you used is spot on, curiosity. If we come at an angle of curiosity with everything we do and say and feel, it just broadens our horizons and opens up new pathways. So you're not coming from an angle of assumptions or presumptions or judgment. And those of you who know me know that I talk about this all the time. It's about looking at things from a totally know-nothing state. So you don't know anything. You park your presumptions, assumptions, and judgment, and you see things with a fresh pair of eyes, a new lens, and you look at things and you feel things and you hear things, perhaps things that you've never heard or seen or felt before. Because thick of it, when you take a step back, it's like, that's interesting. I didn't notice that before.
And this is the perfect time too, isn't it? Because it is a time where nothing is, this is unprecedented. Nothing like this has happened before. So actually going at it through curiosity and through like a more sort of present and mindful, what's kind of going on for me right now, is definitely going to be more productive, I suppose,
Absolutely.
than assumptions of what it's going to look like. Because there was something that I've forgotten it now, but I think it is what the Buddhists say, that they say relax, everything's out of control. So usually as a human beings, we're very like, relax, everything's in control. But this kind of Buddhist saying of like, everything's meant to be out of control, everything's meant to change, everything's meant to kind of be up and down. That's kind of what life really is when we do strip it back. It's not this, flat line. It's the heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's the, and all the bits in between. So
Absolutely.
actually be having faith in the out of control bits too is the skill.
That's a great way of looking at it. It's always the darkest before the dawn, right? So, there is going to be a new day every day. So, embrace the darkness, because through the darkness we learn. When we're most vulnerable, that's where we're the most strongest. That's when we learn about ourselves and about each other, about humanity, and that's where we grow and flourish and become evolved versions of ourselves. So, in this period, I personally don't believe it's anything to be scared about. It's about, wow, what can I do? What can I learn? How can I move forward? Using that mindset of a growth mindset really helps people, certainly in the practice that I do, to future-proof. Because if you think, right, I can learn from this, I can grow from this, I can develop from this, whatever life throws at you, it will be always a learning opportunity.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect kind of summary of where we're at right now. And I have high hopes. I really hope that where we are at right now is going to put so much perspective that we've never had the opportunity to kind of look at it from that angle before. That again, what we learn now, what we can kind of achieve now, and even though it might just be getting out of bed and getting dressed and getting ourselves sort of on with the day, that's been a big achievement some of these days, to be honest.
And I think that's absolutely, and I think that's really important. And one of the questions I had is, how do you cope when you have a partner, husband or a wife, that may be at home that usually isn't? How do we cope in a small space with that other extra person who usually comes in later on in the evening? So in this period of time, it's really important to establish clear boundaries of what is acceptable and unacceptable for both parties. So, for example, you're at home and your partner comes in and he or she puts all his or her papers on the table and you've just cleaned, right? It might be saying, actually, this is unacceptable for me because this is something I've done on my to-do list, and you've done something that I don't like and it's making me feel upset. Now, you can feel upset, of course, feel what you're feeling, but then there's a boundary that you can set thereafter. This is how it made me feel. I don't want to feel like this. So this is the boundary that I'm setting. What are your thoughts? It's about clear and effective communication going forward during this period as well, to get rid of that overwhelming feeling of, oh my gosh, he's here. Oh my gosh, she's here. I don't know what to do. The kids are doing it. So when you have clear, established boundaries for everybody concerned, children included, right? You can watch TV such and such time, and that is it. No ifs, no buts. If there is an if or but, there will be a consequence, because I'm not going to tolerate it, because mummy needs headspace. Mummy needs time. Mummy needs to feel great. Daddy needs to feel great, and so on and so forth. So it's establishing clear boundaries so you can move forward and be amicable during this period, because we're in close proximity to each other. Often we feel like this where it's during Christmas period when everyone's together and all that kind of stuff. But now, we don't know how long we're going to be like this. We really don't know. Okay, so in that interim period of uncertainty, you can create some boundaries. And when you establish boundaries, it will make you feel better about the situation too, and less overwhelmed.
I know. I've heard of someone that's actually put a Christmas tree up this week.
Yeah, well, great for them.
It kind of makes total sense, and they've just been like, "Screw this." we're turning it completely on its head, which just really made me chuckle. But I think something, and this is, I was speaking to some people about this on Instagram as well, about and like boundaries is the perfect kind of summary of what we need to be thinking of, where our boundaries are, and then, like you said, making them to be non-negotiable, or having those firm boundaries around information at the moment. And I think, we've got family members that love to share, love to talk about this stuff. I'm in a WhatsApp group with friends, and every second message at the moment is news, real news, fake news, other kind of news. I know, like WhatsApp groups, sorry, Facebook groups, especially the mums groups as well. I think in the admins have had to post so many times, like, guys, we've got like 600 messages around this one topic at the moment. So understanding where your boundaries are with information at this time probably quite useful as well, I imagine, to sort
Absolutely.
of stuff
You
that,
can say no. You can say stop, and you can say no. You know, I've had family members send me lots of memes and lots of false information, fake news, if you like, and I haven't even bothered to open it yet. And I've had comments saying, "Oh, you haven't looked at it because they haven't got the 2 ticks, right?" So I'm not interested. I'm really not. Please don't send it to me. I'm not interested. If you send it, I'm not going to read it. And it promptly stopped. So it's about actually speaking your truth. No means no, and I don't want it, and this is why I don't want it. If you cannot respect it, then perhaps removing yourself from the said WhatsApp groups. Again, it's about protecting yourself, making you feel great about you. And, you know, so you're not feeling overwhelmed or even having the potential of feeling overwhelmed by information which may potentially not be true in the digital age, in the age of fake news and so on and so forth, right? You know, we've got the Daily Mail, Daily Fail.
Yeah, we're going to get Alex Meyer from House of Social on over the next few days or early next week to talk about how we can actually physically do some of this stuff, so around notifications, how we can curate our sort of social content. So I'm looking forward to that session. She's going to help us figure out some of that stuff, which I think leads to a lot of overwhelm and anxiety, comparison in today's day and age. That'll be a nice sort of complement to this. So we're kind of coming to the end of our time. So I didn't know if we've got any questions. Nothing popped up on the live, but I think a couple of questions that people had messaged in specifically was kind of around, was family related, I suppose, and I suppose being on top of each other, like you said, and just sort of covered that. But one question in particular around parental overwhelm. So I know, obviously, having experience in this zone, do you have any tips on how to kind of keep ourselves sane in that zone?
So there's expectation versus reality. It's marrying the two together. Okay, I'm not a teacher, so I can't sit and teach my kids like the teachers at their school can, right? Many of us are not teachers, and there are teachers amongst us, but for the most part, we're not. So when we have certain tasks that we have to help our children with, it is about expectation versus reality. There isn't a competition that, you know, your child has done better than mine because I know how to do it. It's not like that at all. It's actually removing yourself from that and saying, okay, I can do what I can do within what in the realm of what I can do. And if I can't do that, if I have time to do that, I will do it. But I'm not going to pressure myself to become overwhelmed by the fact that, you know, little Johnny hasn't done his rocket ship with toilet paper rolls because I haven't got any toilet paper rolls. What am I going to do? We need to use toilet. So and so forth. Often when we start talking to ourselves slowly, take a step back, expectation versus reality matches, then we can actually have something. Okay, so this is a situation to do. This is what I'm prepared to do, and I'm not going to do it anymore because I've got to maintain my personal space. I've got to maintain my sanity, and I have to make me feel great about me first and foremost.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose we can apply that to loads of scenarios, not just parenting. Really, that's expectations. Another thing I read was that suffering is the gap between our expectations and our reality, and that, I suppose, makes sense. Is that's the stress that we put ourselves under, that's the guilt, the shame, the, you know, all those kind of emotions that go along with that space.
And that's what we're choosing. And that's the thing, that's what we're choosing. We can choose to be kind to ourselves. We can choose to relax our boundaries if we want to. So again, it goes back to the to-be list. We can choose how we want to be so we can feel great about any situation.
I think the to-be list is going to be a great thing for us to implement on our group. We start that tomorrow. Maybe everybody has to let us know what they are going to be that day. I think that will be nice to, as a sort of accountability task almost, that we can have that, and we can show up for ourselves and do something good for ourselves. A lot of kindness on there. Want to see lots of kindness in my to-be list, because it's getting me through stuff at the moment for sure. So Tess, if people want to kind of get in touch with you, how do they reach you? Do you have a website?
Yes, my website is tesspereiracoaching.com. It's being maintained at the moment, so it'll go live in the next week or so. Or you can contact me on Instagram at Tess Pereira Coaching. I'm on Twitter at Tess Pereira Coaching. Or you can phone me. You can find my details on my Instagram page. So do contact me if you want to have a chat, and you're very welcome.
Cool, no worries. And I can put your contact details in the
Thank you, darling.
below. And if you're watching this on replay and you do have something to ask that we've not covered, then Tess is in the group and she's always around to sort of give us any additional information, should we need it as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, darling.
Garden.
Makes a change, right?
Definitely. I'm hiding in the bedroom, so I'm going to get out and garden for the next.
And the dog and the husband, they're all inside.
I'm blessed. Giving you some peace. That's your boundaries.
Absolutely. There we go. All right.
Brilliant. So thanks for those who've been watching. It's been another great session. We've got a few more things planned. We're probably not going to stick to our sort of structure of one thing a week. I'm going to try and bring you as much as humanly possible. This week's been a little bit mad because I've not had any childcare, but hopefully next week I'm in my routine a little bit now, and also I'll use Tess's matrix for my to-do list, so I can delegate and delete probably half of the list. And yeah, if there is anything that you want to hear somebody talk about, if there's a therapy or an issue or a question, just let us know. You can sort of DM us or comments, get in touch, however it might be. Email us hello@safespacedxb.com, and yeah, we're here for you. It is mental, it is a wild ride, so whatever we can do to help, just let us know. But thanks for tuning in. Yes. Very much so. But thanks, Tess. Thanks for your time. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will be back shortly. I will let you know what's coming next. And also, actually, while you're here, I might have a virtual games night planned, just to have a little bit of fun with this space. So I'm going to test it tonight. If it works, and you offer a bit of virtual game trivia, then let's do it. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Tess, and we will catch up with you guys soon. Take care and have a good evening.
Bye.
Stay safe.